research I found was only on academics, not speech therapy and the parental involvement on that. There's very extremely limited on the involvement of parental influence on speech therapy. So I compared and contrasted them. Background knowledge is speech therapy is the practice of saying certain sounds, learning to tell when a sound is correct or wrong, and practicing sounds and sentences building up from there. The definition of speech disorder is an impairment of the articulation of speech sounds, fluency, and/or voice. The speech treatments are speech therapy, AAC devices, and physical exercises, also known as OT and PT. The types of speech disorders are articulation disorders, fluency disorders, voice disorders, dysarthria, aphasia, and stuttering. So let's define parental support. It's the way parents choose to raise and educate their children. Family plays a crucial role in shaping one's personality and fulfilling functions. Children mimic parents. It's like a mirror. Your parents are your biggest influencers, so whatever they do, you're going to do and mimic. Parents are the most important influencers in a child's life. So my hypothesis, I was bouncing back and forth at first, but it ended up as I thought that parental influence will positively benefit kids throughout their speech therapy journey. My expected outcomes were that kids will benefit by parental involvement in speech, will increase and their language be more broad and expanded. So my method was I found a bunch of articles on different aspects, and then I compared and found and analyzed them. So I found some articles on parental influence, some on speech therapy, some on academics, and other aspects, just music and how when parents were involved, how there was benefits and drawbacks. And then I compared and contrasted. I was like, okay, so what are the benefits? What are the in-betweens? Why is it benefiting? How is it going to benefit? So then my participants, as I said earlier, was children in primary through secondary school, because elementary and high school, there's really important in the articles. So my research began I researched impacts of parental support on kids, and then moved on to comparing and contrasting and supporting. And then I started analyzing. I was like, okay, what are these drawbacks? What are the pros? And I found the result of overall that there was a majority of them that was benefiting. So my design of it was at first deep dive was on the speech therapy, treatment, and parental backgrounds. So then my second deep dive was the benefits, and my third deep dive was the drawbacks of parental involvement. My fourth deep dive was the neutral effects, and there's some but not many neutral effects. Like the parents would be involved just enough, so I was like, oh, okay, they're not failing, but they're doing good. They're not slacking, but they're just enough to be average. And the participants pools seem to be broken up into different dynamics, as parents were highly involved or too much involved. And then there was the medium level where they were involved, and then there's just nothing not involved at all. Assessment. So my three main quotes I found in my research that really justified my hypothesis, and where the first one was the importance of considering multiple interpersonal relationships simultaneously to heighten adolescence and academic performance. This shows that when you have a relationship with someone, their support will benefit you. It helps them grow, and you mimic your friends. You are whoever your friends are. It's like the mirror effect. You are whoever you hang out with, and your parents. Your parents are in your life, so they will benefit you. The second one that really was very important in my research was parental involvement in sustaining students' engagement in music, learning through positive tactics such as attending instrument classes with their children, occupying them to practice, and helping them recall lesson materials. So without parent in their classes, okay, what did you learn? You're not recalling anything. So the more you practice, the more you're recalling it to tell it to your parents. and the more good you have with your parents, that means you're practicing it, repetition. So if I put this in speech therapy, you would, say cat, and then they'll get cat after a certain amount of time. So repetition, like having your parents beside you, will help guide that practice. And then I loved, this is I love how this quote said parents play a critical role in understanding, supporting, and nurturing their child's developmental journey, because we are nothing without our parents. And I know some kids have parents over pressure and create burnout, and there's some parents who are just so much that they disengage. But if you have that healthy amount, the kid's gonna excel up to here. As someone who went through speech therapy, my mom was involved, and it changed my whole life. I wouldn't be speaking as clearly as I am. I would be mumbling. If my parents were involved, I still wouldn't have been in speech therapy, and I wouldn't have gotten to where I needed to be. Outcomes. My final outcomes were students excelled in great measure with parental guidance. They studied the students' grade and motivation experience. The more parents were involved, the more successful the children. They studied the kids who were experiencing lower grades and low motivation rates were because parents were not involved, or they were too involved, where it was just not fun, engaging for them. It wasn't positive. The study also determined that some instances the parental influence might be less involved, just involved enough just to make neutral results where they were just average, and they weren't excelling, but they weren't having low scores. And I liked how up here, these two graphs shows that this is about the attendance. So when the parents are not involved, the students tend to withdraw from therapy and school. And here it shows that parental support were higher in class and they were lower in class, higher in class, and then online. And then we can see that the pressure the parents gave made it go lower in the parents' involvement. Those two were the key charts I found. I just liked how they put everything together. It was then there is something parental involvement that is pressure, and that's the only drawbacks, but that's positive. So my first result, that the more parents are involved, the more kids thrive. My second result was too much pressure can create burnout. And my third result was some kids are not affected negatively or positively. My final result, there is more benefits to including parents in speech therapy without involvement. My discussion is the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. The biggest downside is overly pressuring, and parents are key to a successful journey. The parents are key to a kid's successful speech journey. Thank you to Professor Redevalis, Professor McVeigh, and all my professors who have been friends and family. Thank you so much. Here are my resources and any questions. Hello.
Hi. Back to the chart. I know you mentioned when there's too much involvement from parents. Did they talk about it in the charts and show what the effects were? Because I know you mentioned burnout is possible, or they are willing to withdraw emotionally from it.
So it had a little extra after it, and then I saw external pressure. And the reason why they're burnout is because external pressure and disengagement, coping, engagement, comfort seeking, escape. It goes through all the why, the data with it, and then after it showed us hey, this is why they're getting this way. Their parents are too hard and stuff like that.
And when you compared the different studies, did they have definitions of parental involvement of what those activities were, and was the measurements, were they comparable? Because you were going to compare studies, were they talking about the same thing?
They were talking, so there's different aspects, so they would talk about some same thing in academics. So Yes, and they were all mostly saying that they were, like, the engagement was better for them, but there's less dropbacks and less neutral effects.
We're working out a few technical difficulties, so thank you for your time. Our next student is Madison Taylor. Madison is majoring in communication sciences and disorders with a minor in neuroscience. She's from Seminole, Florida, and has been at SEU for 2 years. While at SEU, she's served as a residential mentor for our SEU Link post-secondary transition program. She's been a clinical SLP intern at Pathway School of Excellence and a student leader for campus outreach. And after graduation, she plans to pursue her master's in speech pathology at the University of Central Florida in the fall and seeking to glorify God through her career as a student and a future clinician. Thank you, Madison.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Like you said, my name is Madison, and I'm excited to present to you today my research proposal concerning nutrition, exercise, and the effectiveness of speech therapy in post-stroke aphasia. So to begin, what is aphasia? Aphasia is a neurodegenerative communication disorder that often presents after a stroke that's caused from neural damage to major regions in the brain that control language. So those include Wernicke's area and Broca's area, which are pictured on this chart. So Wernicke's area is located in the temporal lobe, and it's critical for receptive language. So when someone's talking to you, being able to understand what they're saying, being able to read, taking in communication and language. And Broca's area is located in the frontal lobe, critical for expressive language. So being able to generate speech, write, and express your own thoughts and ideas. And like I said, it is oftentimes the result of a stroke, and it has a major impact on a patient's ability to just communicate and interact with their surroundings, which can be a very frustrating experience. So some statistics, 21 to 38% of stroke cases result in aphasia, so there's a very large population. 2 million Americans are currently diagnosed with aphasia, and an additional 180,000 are diagnosed annually according to the National Aphasia Association. So we're dealing with a very large population, and aphasia has a very large impact on the quality of life for patients, so this is very important to study. So why are we looking into nutrition and exercise? First of all, exercise. There have been many studies to show the positive benefits of exercise on cognitive function for patients. Firstly, exercise has been known to release brain-derived neurotrophic factors, or BDNFs, which are a type of protein that are released by exercise that contribute to growth in the brain and neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to rewire after damage has been done and create new neural connections. Aerobic activity promotes blood flow throughout the body, bringing oxygen to the brain, which is critical for our neural tissue and cognitive health. Exercise promotes neural connections in the hippocampus, which is crucial for learning and memory, both of which are very important for patients to be able to interact with therapy material. And finally, there have been studies showing the positive impact of exercise on mental health. So we know that it has an impact on our brains and on our minds. So there's reason to believe that it could also benefit therapy specifically. And nutrition. So we know that the human brain requires a multitude of vitamins, nutrients, antioxidants, and many other things to stay healthy and stay functioning. And studies have shown that many people, especially in America, are not meeting these recommended levels. And specifically, some examples, this list is not exhaustive, but that includes B vitamins such as B6, B9, B12, antioxidants like vitamin C and E, omega-3 fatty acids, and minerals such as zinc and magnesium. And overall, the research that I did led me to wonder if nutrition and exercise could have a more direct impact on patients' ability to react with therapy or interact with therapy material, engage with therapists, and ultimately contribute to a more holistic recovery. Okay, so this led me to propose the research question: do nutrition and exercise play a role in the effectiveness of language therapy in patients diagnosed with stroke-induced aphasia? So the population that I've set out for my design are adult aphasia patients. So specifically stroke-induced aphasia can have other causes such as traumatic brain injury or brain tumors or things of that nature, but I wanted to focus specifically on stroke-induced aphasia for this study. And of those patients within the acute phase, which is the first phase of stroke recovery, and I am looking to use about 80 participants. Some exclusionary criteria that I decided on are any co-occurring neurodegenerative diseases that are having an impact on patients' cognitive function and language skills, any medication that they're on, whether it's for their stroke treatment or other that is having an interference with their cognitive functioning, or severe physical disability, because we'll be implementing exercise into the study. And then the healthcare professionals that will be involved in this study include speech-language pathologists or speech therapists, if that's a more familiar term, registered dietitians, and physical therapists. So for methodology, this is going to be a randomized controlled trial, which means that the 80 participants that I will be using will be split randomly into 4 separate groups, which I'll go into in a minute, which means 20 people for each group. And each group across the board is going to be receiving identical weekly traditional aphasia language therapy from speech-language pathologists. So the amount of speech therapy that they're getting and the protocol is going to be consistent throughout all 4 groups. So group A is going to be the control group. So they're going to be keeping whatever diet and activity levels are typical for them while also receiving speech therapy as scheduled. Group B is going to be meeting with a registered dietitian in addition to develop a diet or supplement plan in addition to their language therapy. Group C will be meeting with physical therapists to develop an exercise plan in addition to their therapy. And Group D will be meeting with both physical therapy and the registered dietitian in addition to their therapy. So how is this going to test my hypothesis? This study is going to allow me to isolate the impacts of both nutrition and exercise on the patient's language skills to be able to really take a deep dive into the influence that it's having on the language centers in their brain and their ability to interact with the material and benefit from it to hopefully have faster recovery. So the variable breakdown, what exactly is this going to look like? So for nutrition, we would be following the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA's recommendations. Like I said, the patients will be meeting weekly with registered dietitians to be developing their diets. Their pre and post-stroke diets are going to be both taken into account to identify any nutrient gaps that the dietitians can work to fulfill, and just see what kinds of essential nutrients and vitamin supplements that can be taken. And for exercise, like I said, the physical therapists will be involved, and exercises are going to be the ones recommended under the American Heart Association for post-stroke patients. So this is going to include aerobic exercise for 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week, and resistance training, 10 reps of 8 exercises, 2 days a week is what's generally recommended. And then they will be working with the physical therapist to just make sure that that's good for each patient. So for data collection, the first form that I will be doing is standardized assessment. And I've selected 2 different assessments to use for this. First being the Boston Diagnostic Aphasia examination, and secondly, the Western Aphasia Battery Device. So these are both different, just comprehensive assessments that speech language pathologists can use for patients to assess where their language skills are at. And it goes into all separate types of language in many different areas, so they're able to really pinpoint where they're at. And this is going to be taken at a baseline, so at the beginning before the start of therapy, again at 3 months, and then again at 6 months to be able to see any progress that's occurring. Secondly, I will be having each patient undergo an fMRI, or a functional magnetic resonance imaging. So this type of imaging of the brain is basically going to show changes in neural composition, and while a patient is doing a therapy activity, it will show the regions of the brain that are being activated in these pictures. So in this example, up top, I can't really reach, but that is from this area, and then, which is important for expressive language, and then Wernicke's area at the back, which is important for receptive language. So these are just going to be important to show any changes in neural activity throughout the study. So to keep track of data, I'll be keeping the results, including the aphasia quotient score, which is from the standardized tests, and the fMRI activation scores in a table like this, the averages for each group at each time period, and then I'll be using a data analysis method called ANOVA, which stands for analysis of variance, to just see if there's any significant variance in the studies that will say whether this worked or not. So projected outcomes, I'm hypothesizing that both patients with a nutrient-dense diet and patients who are meeting with their physical therapists are going to be better able to engage with the therapy material, and therefore will have a faster recovery. And that both of these factors are going to positively benefit the patients and their cognitive function. So why is this significant? This study and the results found from it would be huge for the areas of speech language pathology, but also nutrition, physical therapy, neuroscience, and many other fields, because it is an interdisciplinary study. It's a holistic approach and can be empowering for patients who are generally in a very frustrating time in their lives. Communication can be really tough, especially when it comes to interacting with others and not being able to express your own ideas. So it's really good for patients and just improving their quality of life and confidence. And it can also prompt further research on more specific exercises, more specific nutrients, and kind of further break down that and apply it to not only aphasia, but other neurodegenerative diseases. So first, I'd like to acknowledge Jesus Christ, who is my Lord and Savior, and He has truly carried me throughout my whole life, and especially these last 2 years at Southeastern. Also, my family and friends, my parents are here, so that's amazing. And then all my awesome professors at Southeastern. Here are my references. Thank you.
Very a very interesting topic, so, this is my world, I love it. So, we know that the variability of patients is so vast and diverse. So, have you thought about, are you looking for a certain level, severe, like do they both have to have expressive and receptive issues, or was there any kind of clarification or narrowing down that you did for that?
Yes, so I would be looking for patients who are having issues with both expressive and receptive to be able, and those would be determined in a standardized assessments. In future studies, I would be hoping to be able to get more specific with different types of aphasia. But yeah, for this, I would be looking for expressive and
And second, the Boston and the Minnesota and Boston both, those are both really extensive, comprehensive batteries. Are you gonna do both on all patients, or you do some one battery and some the other?
I was planning, so it was the Western aphasia. Yeah. I was planning on doing both, but yeah, I was planning on doing both for each patient.
Because then your quotients if you're just putting one quotient in there, it would be different. You'd have to have two, just something to think about.
Yeah, you're right. I would probably on this table that you're referencing add another column for like each test. Yeah.
And my last one says, this is my world, so, we know that they're meeting with those professionals each week, PT meeting with, the dietitian. That doesn't necessarily guarantee change in behavior the rest of the week, especially with the nutrition stuff. The PT could see them do the exercises and things, but, have you thought about that? Like, is there any way of accountability for what they are actually eating throughout the week?
I honestly hadn't thought about that. That's a really great point. I would hopefully maybe look to or like family involvement if that's an option, or things of that nature to be able to make sure that they're sticking to it.
Good job.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Well, not the laptop, so thank you guys for being so flexible and closing those windows while you're speaking. It's amazing. She does that, I'll announce our next student. Up next, we have Madison Voss. Madison is majoring in communication disorders. She's from Rockford, Michigan, and has been at SEU for 4 years. While she's been at SEU, she says she's part of Michelin, which is our company, the president this past year. She also is an honor student, and after graduation, she plans to pursue her master's in technology. So, Madison and Madison.
Hi everybody, my name is Madison Voss, and my capstone research was on the effects of screen time on children's language development. More specifically, I looked into whether executive functioning intervention would be an effective form of treatment for children that are suffering from expressive language delays due to excessive exposure to screen time. So, have you ever seen a kid at a restaurant just eyes glued to their iPad while their family talks around them? Because I have too, and that pains me. So I figured that understanding this relationship between screen time and language development would be helpful for parents, educators, and healthcare professionals to find recommendations for screen time limits for their own kids. So what exactly is executive functioning? So the National Library of Medicine refers to executive functions as self-control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility being the ability to think outside of the box. So these are all essential skills for reasoning and problem solving. Screen time is considered to be any electronic media use coupled with traditional TV viewing. So this could be playing games on an iPad or watching cartoons or even educational media. And the screen time, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry recommends that children be limited to 1 hour of screen time per day on the weekdays and about 3 hours on the weekends. Despite this, many children under 8 use about 2.5 hours of screen time per day. So this upsurge in technology usage has brought some worry to lots of parents and educators about the negative effects that their children may be experiencing. And there are a lot of known negative factors associated with screen time, such as decreased physical activity, high risk of obesity due to sedentary behaviors, attention deficit issues that resemble ADHD, and most importantly for my research, delayed language development. So understanding typical language development is key to knowing and identifying when there is a delay in language. So children develop both expressive and receptive language skills. Expressive skills being skills that are necessary for communicating ideas effectively through reading, speaking, or gesturing. And then receptive skills are skills that help them to process and intake information, whether that be through reading or listening. So the study that I plan to conduct will involve children ages 3 through 7, and these children must have a reported screen time greater than 2 hours per day, and they must also have a reported undiagnosed speech or language disorder. And then parental approval must be obtained in order to survey them, and the parents will be contacted and recruited through schools, churches, and social media networks. Some exclusionary criteria, so kids that will not qualify are children that are outside of the age range of 3 to 7, children who are reported to have less than 2 hours of screen time per day, and children with a prior diagnosis that affects the way they acquire their language. So I will be collecting data through 3 primary methods, those being standardized assessment, observational analysis, and intervention. The standardized assessment that I plan to use is the Preschool Language Skills Assessment, the PLS-5, which is a standardized assessment of expressive and receptive language of children ages 3 through 7, so I figured it was perfect for my study. And this assessment is scored on the typical bell curve with normal limits ranging from 85 to 115. So children that score under 85 will qualify for the intervention plan. Secondly, the observational analysis will consist of collecting and analyzing a language sample. So this will be from children in natural settings such as the classroom, at home, on the playground, things like that. I will collect their language using the Sugar Language Sample Analysis Method, which is a framework for documenting the frequency of language utterances. So you write down all these utterances that children make, so all the sounds that they produce, and collect data from that. Thirdly, the intervention plan I have designed is designed to target pragmatic language, verbal reasoning, and self-control skills. And pragmatic language is the social use of language. So whether that be greeting somebody or apologizing or understanding sarcasm, these are all pragmatic language skills. So the intervention plan that I designed involves play-based language development, which helps build vocabulary in a natural way. And then it involves scripts. So scripts are something we use in everyday life, whether that be greeting somebody, you say, "Hi, how are you?" The response of, "Good, how are you?" That's a script. It's just an automatic learned response or a learned phrase to initiate conversation or to initiate a connection with somebody. So I will also be teaching supports for comprehension and expression. So these will be involving visual aids or graphic organizers in class that help them to process the information they're being given. And I will be teaching emotional regulation strategies, such as breathing techniques or mindfulness, things that help them to be emotionally regulated in stressful situations. Next, we will be doing attention building exercises. So this will be memory games that help them to build their memory. And lastly, parental involvement will be highly encouraged to maintain the progress and to limit screen time at home. So my goal is to analyze the PLS-5 scores before and after the intervention to determine if there was a effect on the expressive language skills of the children that received the intervention. And this slide here details my intervention plan and the timeline, which is spread out over 8 months. The first month will include the initial PLS-5 assessment, and observation will be conducted at home. And next, the intervention will begin as play-based to build trust and engagement. Month 2 will have in-class observation, and the intervention will begin as introducing scripts and emotional regulation techniques. And then month 6, we will move on to in-class observation and introduce attention and comprehension supports in class and during therapy. And lastly, in month 8, we'll have the final PLS 5 assessment. There will be another in-class observation. Did I switch those? I did. But in-class observation and to compare to the first one. And then parental involvement will be encouraged from here on out. Alrighty, so based on the literature and the structure of the intervention, I will expect to see improved expressive language skills, greater amounts of self-control, better grades, and most importantly, less amounts of screen time. These results will help parents and educators and policymakers set screen time recommendations and limits for their own kids. And I believe that this will just be an overall influential study. Thank you to everybody that was a part of this process. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
I have questions about the intervention variables.
Yes.
Can you, that seems like it's very, you covered a lot.
Yes.
Do you feel like if you had to narrow it down, which ones do you like, based on what you brought and so what would be the most important ones to measure?
I think that in regards to the expressive language deficits with screen time, definitely play-based language development, just so they can build their vocabulary so they have more words to pull from in regards to expressive language. And then probably scripts, so they have, methods of, pulling words from, again, just because the expressive language is what suffers.
Makes sense.
Yes.
How are you monitoring screen time outside of school?
So I can't regulate it necessarily, so it's more of just a parent.
Like a parent's like survey or something would need to be a.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, parent
And
survey
focus
is
around
needed. Right, and then just parent reported screen time during the treatment and
Again, I kind of was referred, like, there's so much, like,
yes,
really
yeah,
to
there's
be
a
able
lot.
to measure and have valid research, probably need to just fine tune it.
Yeah.
A little bit more, but, and then who's reporting it? You said reported undiagnosed SLP diagnosis.
Yes,
So is this just the parents feel like it, or?
yes, either parents or teachers notice some delay, so they've been recommended for observation or assessment,
Gotcha.
but they haven't gotten to that point yet. Yeah. Anybody else? All right.
Thank you guys so much. Next up will be the alumni panel that will start at 10 o'clock. If you look at your schedule. So you're welcome to come back for that from 10 to 10:45. So if you're visiting with us today, head up to the left, there's restrooms, there's water fountains, and drink machines. And students, you can help them with those like here. And then, yeah, so come up right back in at 10 o'clock for alumni panel. See you then. Thank you.